Good morning. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive, and I'm here with Westchester County District Attorney Mimi Rocah and a host of other important individuals to support a launch by the District Attorney of an important new initiative that's going to reach out, working through some of our police departments around Westchester County. It's only been a few months since District Attorney Mimi Rocah, Miriam Rocah to be more specific, has taken responsibility as District Attorney. Our county administration, which includes the Department of Public Safety, is very pleased to work with her and her very professional team of individuals to try to help advance some of the issues that are very important to us here in Westchester County. And the ability of the local governments, local police departments, and the county government, the county police department, the Westchester County Board of Legislators, we're joined by Vidat Gashi, one of our county legislators, to support the initiative of the District Attorney is very important. So without any other further ado, let me introduce our Westchester County District Attorney, Mimi Rocah. Mimi?
Thank you. Good morning. First of all, thank you so much to the County Executive, George Latimer. I'm so pleased to be here with you today and with one of my main law enforcement partners, the President of the Westchester County Police Chiefs Association and also the Scarsdale Police Chief, Andrew Maturo. Also want to acknowledge the Westchester County Police, who I don't believe are represented here today, but are partners with us in this effort. Also with us today, very important community partners without whom we could not do this. Westchester Asian American Advisory Board Co-Chair, Marjorie Shu, Islamic Center of New Rochelle Imam, Mohammed Shafiq Chase, Community Resource Center Executive Director Gerandi Martinez, and Merlene Chauvet, Director of the Haitian Resource Center at the Thomas H. Slater Center, and Bob Chow, Vice President of the Hudson Valley Chapter of the OCA Asian Pacific American Advocates. I am so grateful for the county's financial support to ensure that our local police departments all have access to real-time interpreter services through the language line, which provides on-demand interpreting in more than 240 languages via mobile phone, video, and phone through a team of more than 14,000 professional interpreters. While many of our local police departments may already use language line in emergency situations, the additional financial support from the county that we are announcing today is meant to ensure that all of our local police departments have this access whenever they need it across the board. Perhaps most importantly, this announcement signals my office and the county's commitment to making our criminal justice system more accessible to the people of Westchester. For crime victims who need to report crimes, for Good Samaritans who come forward as witnesses, the ability to feel seen and heard is critical. And the fact is that a language barrier can be a strong disincentive for crime victims or witnesses to approach law enforcement for assistance. Non-English speakers commonly rely on friends or family members to provide translation, but this informal process can be unwieldy and impractical, especially when reporting a crime. Access to language line for police departments helps victims by relieving them of the responsibility of finding someone to translate. My office, the Westchester County DA's office, also needs to be accessible to all Westchester residents. We already have a full-time Spanish interpreter. To assist witness with interviews, grand jury proceedings, and other matters, we contract with a translation service that can provide interpreters in over 100 languages by phone, video, and in person if necessary. We also have a hotline, 914-995-TIPS, which is available in Spanish, Mandarin, and many other languages. But we can and we will do more. We are currently having our online complaint form translated into Korean, Mandarin, and Creole. as well as the other languages in which it already exists. We are polling the DA's staff to identify individuals who speak languages other than English so that we can call on them if needed. And we continue to look at additional ways to expand our ability to serve those with limited or no proficiency in English. And I have two important members of my staff here who are key in helping me with those matters. Lila Curtin, my Executive ADA for Intergovernmental Affairs and Criminal Justice Initiatives. She is also the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, the first of executive level in the office. And Saad Siddiqui, our new Immigrations Affairs Coordinator. You can't see them, but they're both here. Effective law enforcement is important to maintaining safe and secure communities across Westchester. And our police departments and our DA's office need to be able to engage and communicate with all residents all the time. This generous support from the county will help to build trust with immigrants, the police, and others with limited English skills. And this in turn will prevent crime, make our communities stronger and safer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam District Attorney. And now we're going to hear from some other individuals who are very involved in both the Westchester community and as well as the law enforcement community, each of whom will be able to add little elements to this announcement which the District Attorney has made today. So first I'm going to call on Andy Maturo, who's the Scarsdale Chief of Police, but also serves as the President of the Westchester County Chiefs of Police Association. You should be mindful that there are roughly 40 separate police departments in Westchester County, as large as Yonkers, as small as Buchanan, but they're all tasked with the same basic functions and responsibilities within their jurisdiction. And of course, Chief Matura and his colleagues each have to figure out how best to deal with the apprehension of criminals through the proper procedures. And so his role and his colleagues' role in all of this is really what we're trying to assist with the DA's initiative. So, Chief Maturo.
Thank you, County Executive Latimer and District Attorney Rocah, for the opportunity to partner with you and to be involved in the language line enhancement of our ability to reach and to accept calls from the community. Westchester County is an extremely diverse community, and our goal as chiefs of police and commissioners throughout Westchester is to provide timely and quality professional police services to our residents. Having information in real time and the ability to assist residents in feeling more comfortable and more trusting of law enforcement just makes our job easier. And again, I just want to thank the county for allowing us to participate in the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We have many different organizations, boards, and commissions in Westchester County government where we bring people from different ethnic or demographic groups to meet to discuss issues that are important to those particular demographic groups and to try to customize our policies around the needs of those separate organizations and communities. And over the course of the last few months, we've realized that we've had a gap historically in terms of our outreach to the Asian American community. And the Asian American community has a diverse group of individuals that have connection back to Japan and Korea, China, Thailand, India, a host of other communities within there, and within there a host of different languages. And so as each of us try to deal with how do we serve our Westchester residents as best as possible, how do we deal with this mosaic of Westchester, we turn to, in this case, our different advisory boards, and our next speaker is the co-chair of the newest of those boards, the Asian American Advisory Board, Marjorie Hsu. Marjorie?
Thank you, County Executive Latimer. It was my privilege to join the Asian American Advisory Board last month, particularly in this moment of nationwide crisis of anti-AAPI hate, with incidents nearing 4,000. And culturally, we believe that that number is severely underreported as well. We were very gratified to work with the District Attorney Rocah's office as well as County Executive Latimer's office to launch the Speak Up Westchester campaign, with Asian Americans being the fastest growing demographic across the country in Westchester and New York City. It's a particular challenge that new immigrants faced relative to language access. So this language line is a really excellent next step in encouraging new immigrants to report issues and incidents and crimes. Typically, a lot of new immigrants are relying on their school-age children. Now we will have the ability to have new immigrants feel more secure and assimilate and feel confident as the newest residents of Westchester County. Thank you.
Before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to recognize, again, I mentioned him sort of in passing, but we're joined by a member of the Westchester County Board of Legislators, Vedat Gashi, who represents Yorktown and some of the other communities in northern Westchester, Newcastle, and so forth. The Board of Legislators, along with the District Attorney, have been leaders in looking at the issues of diversity here in Westchester County. And we have a very diverse Board of Legislators. 9 of our 17 members are female, which is the first time, to my knowledge, that a majority of Board of Legislator members in any county in New York State are female. We have a number of individuals who are African American on the board and Hispanic American. We have our first Muslim American member of the Board of Legislators. So the diversity of Westchester is very much reflected by the board, and we appreciate Legislator Gashi being with us today for this announcement. Next, we're going to ask Bob Chow to speak. He's president of the Hudson Valley chapter of OCA, Asian Pacific American Advocates. Bob is a fixture in Westchester County and other Hudson Valley counties. He's been a leader on these issues for a long time, and I guess there's a little bit of gratification, Bob, that we're really starting to make some movements in areas that you have long advocated for. So please join us and share your thoughts.
Hi, thank you, George, County Executive, and thank you very much, DA of Westchester County. I speak for myself first, but also I believe I speak for a lot from our community, that we are really happy that the elected officers in the county are very supportive, paying attention to the need of our community. Many members of our community, they may be the first generation immigrant, so are not comfortable using English as the language to communicate with government agencies. And now we have a way to reach them, and they will be able to help us as a part of the community to make our community a better place for all us to live. I really appreciate that. And today's events, now we're knowing that the District Attorney's Office and the county and the police department in the county are all reaching out to small pocket of different community that can help ourselves to make the community, make our county a safer place for all of us. Thank you.
I've often spoken in other contexts about my own heritage, Irish and Italian American heritage, which does not seem like much of an immigrant community these days in Westchester County, but once upon a time was. And whenever I've spoken to my sister, who paid more attention to this when I was younger, the stories of grandparents and great-grandparents and how they were received when they first came to the United States from Italy and from Ireland, long forgotten, but not forgotten by the individuals who faced prejudice in those days. Now we have a larger number of immigrants coming from other parts of the world. We've just seen some commentary about those who are part of our family who hail from Asian countries. We also have those who are of the Muslim faith, and they may come from any number of different places across the globe, but they are a growing presence here in Westchester County. They are subject to some of the same hate acts that we've seen happen to Asian Americans. We'll talk in a few seconds about the Hispanic and African American communities. But Imam Mohammed Shafiq Chase, Islamic Center of New Rochelle, has been a good friend. We've talked recently about the completion of the Ramadan celebration, Eid Mubarak, and we want the Imam here to talk a little bit about how this initiative by the District Attorney can also be helpful in the Muslim community. Imam.
Thank you very much, County Executive Latimer. and DA Rocah to invite us to launch this very important program. If you just look at the statistical around the county, 1 out of every 3, if you look in this room, 1 out of every 3 immigrant person in this county is from a foreign born, 25% of the county. 56% of them is Latino. And if you look at the concentration of Latino within the county, most of them are concentrated in Sleepy Hollow, Ossining, Port Chester, Elmsford. 19% speak English, Spanish, are not English. If you look at our Indo-European brothers and sisters in the county, 8% of them doesn't speak English. And they're concentrated in, interestingly, how this population is concentrated in various parts of Westchester County. They're more in, you find them more in Mount Vernon, in Yonkers. And if you look at the Asian population, 4%, almost 4%, they're mostly in Harrison, Scarsdale, Rye, and these places. So this is a very vital in terms of language and also cultural sensitivity also, because it goes hand in hand. In our community, in any given mosque, you will find at least any given day people from maybe about 15, 16 different countries that speak different languages. In our mosque in New Rochelle, you have people that speak Tamil, Urdu, Hindi, Arabic, different dialects of those languages. So it's vital in terms of language is what brings us together, and this is critical. And we've seen, like county executive, there's a first time. I've been an imam 15 years in this county, and for this, in this new cabinet, we're seeing a lot of first things in terms of looking into different culture and accommodating the different need for these different cultures. So we're grateful to that, and it's a good way to go. We thank you all for these efforts and these initiatives, and it's a pleasure being here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is a longtime friend of mine, and she heads up the Community Resource Center in Mamaroneck, a community right next door to the one that I live in. And I've seen Gerandy's work and her organization's work over an extended period of time. That particular organization deals with the Hispanic community in Mamaroneck and elsewhere, and also the African American community in there. And I do get a sensitivity because I speak some French. Je parle français un peu, mais je ne parle pas bien. And whenever I have been in Paris, Montreal, or Quebec City, and I've tried to survive on my French speaking skills, they're deficient. And you begin to become a bit intimidated by not being able to grasp the language fully. You catch a noun and you catch a verb. The people that Gerandy Martinez assists are people who have some grasp of English as well as Spanish, but they need assistance in ways that can be very complicated when they're applying for benefits. And in the situation that the district attorney is spotlighting here, if they've been a victim of crime or a witness of crime, and then that the gap in your ability to communicate and understand what you're being asked is critical. That is a gap that she and her organization and her community deals with, and so we're very happy to have Gerandy Martinez here from the Community Resource Center of Mamaroneck to share some of her thoughts about how we try to close this gap.
Thank you. Thank you so much, County Executive George Latimer and Madam District Attorney Mimi Rocah. I am really grateful for this opportunity, this accessibility of language access. It means that we can meet our community where we are or where they are. And that's critical for building trust and helping us create a safer community. At the Community Resource Center, we're committed to doing that. And of course, please continue to count on our support for building that trust. But remembering that our communities have been historically trained because of our experience to avoid law enforcement at all costs, to limit the amount of contact that we have just because we've had experiences where we cannot trust our local law enforcement or our government. And so what we want to do is eliminate those barriers, eliminate the fact that we have a real fear, and we shouldn't have that in this country. And so allowing for this kind of access, language in so many different ways, many different languages, will only help us build that community trust and build a safer community in Westchester. So continue to count on our support. We're happy to be here as a community grassroots organization, and thank you.
Thank you, Durandi. Now, our final speaker probably winced as I butchered French. But Merlene Chauvette is director of Thomas Slater Center's Haitian Resource Center. And of course, the Thomas Slater Center is just a few blocks away from us here in downtown White Plains. It is also an outstanding facility that serves many people in the community. And Merlene deals with yet another element of the mosaic of Westchester County, as you see different elements represented here. So Merlene, please share your thoughts.
Thank you, County Executive and Westchester County DA. It is an honor on this Haitian Flag Day to be a part of this program. It is extremely important to know that in an emergency, there's not only someone that understands you, but understands your language and can speak with you without needing someone to translate on your behalf. In an emergency, you just want to know that you can talk to someone, and language is part of our culture. So to have someone available to us in that moment immediately is extremely important. I thank you both for initiating this and creating this program.
So we want to thank all of our various speakers who've been here to each share some of their experiences. I know we have members of the press in the room. They have risked their own personal health to be in person. Hopefully the new mask requirements will be lifted, and we'll have more of our friends from the press in person. I'm going to ask the district attorney to please join me here, and we'll go back and forth with the masks. And Michelle Brown is with us from News 12, so any questions, Michelle, that you have for the district attorney and myself, please feel free.
Where is the money coming from funding, and how is it going to be allocated specifically?
Well, we have a certain amount of money in our public safety budget that allows for us to do a certain amount of outreach. And because of the way that we have handled our finances so far this year with both our reserve fund issues and how we allocated money for police funding, as we've looked at this initiative, as the district attorney reached out to us, we felt that we would be able to get started with it. We know we have a certain number of communities. I'm sure she'll have a better sense of how many would initially be involved in, so we'll get a scope of how much dollars there are. But once we know the amount of dollars, we feel pretty comfortable that we can finance it from within our existing budget. We have received some federal money for certain COVID-related situations, and when we have people who are fluent in other languages, if they're fluent in Korean and they can help us in that setting, they can also help give COVID information to the individuals who are inquiring about it, because we obviously have a county mission of trying to vaccinate as many people as we can and communicate in the language that people are most comfortable with to try to encourage them to do that. So I just told me we have the money. You figure out how best to use it.
And DA Rocah, is the initiative already underway? And just to reiterate again, how helpful something like this program is going to be for your department specifically? Yes, so some departments, police departments, already do utilize language line, especially in sort of emergent situations. What we're looking to do is work with our law enforcement partners to expand it, so it's available all the time and used more, quite frankly. I think just putting this focus on it will remind the different police departments, as well as people in my own office, that this is something we need to regularly think about, not as an afterthought, but a first thought. And I think that, we're going to be talking, and Chief Maturo will be integral to this, to really surveying the police departments and finding out what their needs are to help build that up. I think, in this time of where we're talking about hate crimes or domestic violence or worker safety or, everyday kind of violent crime, street crime, people knowing that when they do come to the police, it will first of all help them feel more comfortable in approaching the police if they know that there's someone who speaks their language. It also helps them feel that they're being understood, not literally in language, but also in their culture, and that they're important. And that is, really, really the main goal of this project.
Do you mind if I talk to the chief really quickly?
Sure.
Chief, how specifically does it work? Does somebody call in, or are the interpreters going to be in the
Make sure you're, sorry. No, it'll be an access line that we could call in or use as the in between to communicate. But as Ms. Martina pointed out and other speakers pointed out, the nuances of the languages, the building trust and making people feel comfortable. Communication is everything. And if we could communicate and people feel comfortable in their own language, and as DA Rocah said, feeling comfortable, building trust, and feeling familiar with someone in their own language, I think that'll break down a lot of nervousness and apprehensions that people may have with law enforcement. So it not only helps us with the crime victims, but it just helps us every day building trust with law enforcement and our government and reinforcing that we care about our residents in Westchester. So again, it's just, I think it's an excellent opportunity to regain and build trust.
Is there a particular language that you need interpreters more for than others?
Well, again, it's, Hispanic seems to be, at least in my community, again, I'm the chief of Scarsdale. I live in Portchester, and, which is a very large Hispanic population, but in Scarsdale, we have a very large Asian population. So again, it runs the gamut. And, the fact that, they mentioned 240 different languages, it's, I think, as I said, it's going to improve what we already have in place.
Thank you, Michelle. Now, we also have some additional questions. Please feel free to direct them to DA or myself or any of us.
This is from Tara Rosenblum at News 12. DA Rocah, can you discuss some of the thought process that went into the reopening the probe into the 1982 disappearance of Kathy Durst? In general, can you discuss the difficulties of looking for evidence and interviewing witnesses for a case that is 4 decades old?
So the thinking that went into it really is what went into the broader development of our new cold case unit, which is really the first of its kind in Westchester DA's office, something that is being developed as we speak even further with our law enforcement partners. It's something the police departments are very excited about as well as crime victims, families in our county. We have a very experienced, trained prosecutor who is heading it up, who has lots of experience in homicide investigations and prosecutions, working with some of our most experienced investigators, and seeking the input of the departments and, again, of crime victims' families on which cases to reopen. And we are publicizing soon a list of protocols for how we will determine it. But broadly speaking, we obviously will be looking at cases in general where there is either some new evidence or new technology, such as DNA, that didn't exist at the time of the alleged homicides, and also where we have very different attitudes or perspectives on crimes that occurred and how that may help us in solving them better. And I think the case of Kathleen Durst is a good example of that in particular, because at the time that this alleged homicide occurred, we did not have the same understanding of domestic violence and how that kind of abuse could play into relationships and how it could frankly color law enforcement, and by that I mean police and prosecutors' perspectives on what happened and how they investigate a crime. And so I think that the combination of witnesses coming forward in ways that maybe they couldn't have before, statements that have frankly been publicly made in this case by the main suspect, as well as our more modern and evolved perceptions of domestic violence are really important and helpful in solving a case like this now.
Just to follow up on that a little bit, do you expect to bring in a charging decision anytime soon?
So we will investigate this. I mean, obviously, it is challenging to do it after so long, and we want to do it right. This has been around, and the family obviously wants and needs closure. I think a whole community wants and needs closure. So we want to get this absolutely right. So we will bring a charging decision when we are really ready to do that. And, that takes time. It's a complex investigation. There's also a trial going on in another district, which obviously we want to be respectful of. That is part of the criminal justice, our justice process. So I can't give you an exact date, but they are working hard on it, but we want to get it absolutely right.
Any other questions?
Yes, we also have questions for Tara, for you, County Executive. Tara Rosenblum from News 12 Westchester. Her first question is, you were living in Westchester when Kathy Durst disappeared. What was your first reaction when you learned the case into her 1982 disappearance was being reopened by the DA?
Well, I guess the general sense that we have is that technology has gotten us to a different place with DNA availability, and things that seem to be unsolvable any number of years ago may now have the possibility of solution because both technology is available, and then also, as the DA just said, a commitment with a professional prosecutor that's experienced in dealing with cold cases. They know how to find the evidence that might have been out there all along for some reason wasn't identified. So I think, at the end of the day, the most important thing is that justice be done. Justice may not always be possible because of circumstances, but the thinking that a person who was murdered is not forgotten, that case it isn't sort of shunted aside and said, oh, well, it's too bad and that's the way it is, that we as a society are relentless. And that relentlessness sends a message, and I'm sure Chief Maturo can point this out. You deter crime in the future if you can properly find, prosecute, and adjudicate crime of any era, so that a person thinks, if they're rational, they think twice before they do something, knowing that justice, could come even after 40 years. And that's what we hope for.
The second question from Tara is, what do you think is important for the family of Kathy Durst to know?
Well, it's really hard for me to identify that. I'm not a lawyer, a prosecutor, or a law enforcement professional. I speak as an individual. If this had happened to someone in a family that I was related to, I would be comforted to know that people hadn't given up on the loss of my loved one, that person was still alive in their minds and injustice was done to them, and that somehow, somewhere, somebody was stepping forward to try to right that injustice. And I would be appreciative of the district attorney's initiative to try, and who knows what it will take to be successful. I certainly don't, given my knowledge of circumstances, but if I remember the family, I'd be encouraged by this. I would hope that justice might yet be done for Kathy Durst.
The last question that we have today, also from Tara Rosenblum, is any thoughts on the trial underway in California and all the witnesses from Westchester County that will play a role?
Let me refer that to the district attorney.
I think the way I would answer that is to say that our office, the attorneys in our office, are cooperating and communicating with the attorneys in Los Angeles. It's an independent proceeding on a separate crime, but obviously there will be some overlap. And my experience in law enforcement and as a prosecutor is that you never want to step on each other's toes, certainly unnecessarily, because that can really hinder justice being done. And so we are going to respect that process and as much as we can, while also moving forward with our investigation.
Thank you.
So if there are no other questions, I want to thank District Attorney Mimi Rocah for her leadership on this, and I hope you'll always find us in the county administration supportive of your efforts. I want to thank all of our guests who are here today. Each of you in your respective responsibilities are key participants in all of this. To the Board of Legislators, I think our philosophy, all of our philosophy, is very simple. That we believe in government that works together, works cooperatively. There are separate responsibilities for the prosecutorial function of government, for the judicial function of government, for the legislative function of government, the administrative function, and at different levels between the state and local governments. But people expect us to work together to find solutions to problems, and as the district attorney leads, so will your friends help follow. Thank you all very much for your time. Have a good day. Thank you, friends.
Thank you.